Hi, as you were aware that I've been fishing a winter league at Old Huff in Cheshire for the past 8 weeks or 3 months of a midwinter break. I was a guest for Diggle AC, and it was a series of 8 matches split over 4 lakes: Goose, Boulders, Prospect and Lucky Dip. It was a venue that I hadn't fished a great deal before, so I was eager to try something a bit new. I didn't get a bit stale if you keep fishing the same ponds over and over again. So I fancied a change, a different set of anglers to fish against. I knew a couple of the lads, but I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know all of them, so I don't know what standard of angler there was before I turned up. As it turned out, it was a good series. I really enjoyed it. It was a bit different from the F1 fishing. It was more chub and eyed, and the odd carp, which made it a bit interesting. I really enjoyed it. I'll just give you a brief rundown of the matches that I fished, and then a rundown of how I got on at the end. The first match I drew Goose, peg 18, which was one of the flyer pegs on the lake. There's nothing new for me, I always draw good pegs. It was a peg that gave you plenty of options. It was only 9 metres wide, but had a bridge about 3 or 4 metres to your right, an aerator to your right as well. So all the main features of the peg were the narrow side towards the right of your peg. Towards the left it was a bit wider, up to 14 metres. A few rush beds and stuff like that along the far bank. I started off, maybe not knowing the venue, I started off dobbing with bread along the far bank, but all I could get was chub and eyed. So that was a no-go, so I standed a big pot of maggots under the aerator. And this worked a treat because I ended up catching barbel, carp, more chub and eyed, decent sized skimmers. And they ended up winning the match with £36, which is I'm really pleased about, because obviously, like I said, I don't know what the standard of anglers were they were fishing against, but I really enjoyed it. It was a close match. All the top 3 weights all had over £30, so it was really good, and it looked like it was going to be a really good series for me. A fortnight later, and I was back there for this round 2. This time I drew again on Goose, but I was on peg 11 this time, which was on your left hand side, a bit where the path goes in, halfway down the straight. It was just a standard snake lake peg, 40 metres to the far bank, not much in the way of features. A couple of reed beds on the long far bank, a mud bank, same again down the margin, just a couple of reed beds, and nothing standing out like what you could have properly target fish for. I ended up I decided that I'd fish for chub and eyed and give a good, put a cart line in and keep dropping on that through the match. I ended up with £15 of hard chub, but I wasted about 90 minutes looking for carp. Now, you don't know in the match itself if it's a waste of time going for carp or not. It's only after the match when you think, well, I've wasted 90 minutes though, I could have been catching chub and eyed with that. But if I'd have caught a carp in that time, I would have done alright. I would have added to my weight, and I would have been up there second and third in match. As it turned out, he had £15, which was good enough for fourth, which is not too bad, but I was thinking maybe that's one of my dropper results, because I expected to. I really did think I'd be finishing first 3 every single match on my leg, which is standard that I've set myself every match. So I was a bit disappointed, but it's a new venue, new pegs. I don't really know what I'm targeting yet, so I'd give it the benefit of the doubt. Round 3, and it was on a different set of lakes this time, which was Prospect and Lucky Dip. I drew peg 9 on Prospect, which is right down in the far corner, but this is one of the matches where we really struggled with the back end of the hurricane. You needed to fish 14 metres or 16 metres in some pegs, tight across to catch the carp. With the wind being so bad, I could only fish 6-7 metres, and I decided that I couldn't catch a great deal in the track of any decent stamp. All the fish was like 2-3 ounce roach. So I thought, not seeing many anglers around me, I thought I'd get my head down and give this a good go and see if I could pick up a couple of bonus fish as well. That could get me double figures, which would be good enough for mid-section points. So I said, right, get my head down. I ended up with £8 of bits, which is only good enough for 5th. The anglers that took the Ferrarian weights was at the top end where the wind was a bit calmer, and like I said, they could fish 16 metres across, catching carp and the odd barrel. small F1s and what have you, but a lot of decent sized fish. Not many fish, but decent sized fish. So that was another disappointing match. Fortnight after that, and it was back on boulders again. I drew peg 14. Now, working back through the series, this side of the lake has struggled every single match. So it was same again for me. 16 metres at Fairbank. Picked a couple of carp up, picked a couple of high date track. Nothing spectacular. Ended up with £20 and another fourth. So this is when it broke up for Christmas. So we had 2 or 3 weeks we had off. A break over Christmas. And I wasn't happy. I'd fished 4 matches beforehand and I'd only had 1 first. And the other 2 were 4th and 5th. Total pants. And I needed to get my head round it. And I needed to get my arse back in gear and really put some effort in. Else I was going to finish nowhere. So after the Christmas break, I was right, raring to go, up and at it. Right, back on boulders and Lucky Dip, Prospect and Lucky Dip. And this time I drew peg 12 Lucky Dip. But yet again, I don't really know what kind of peg it is. I had a brief look at results from the week before and it seemed to do alright. They had mid £13, £14 from there. Not spectacular, so it was one of them pegs, either they turned up or they didn't turn up. So I drew peg 12, like I said, at Lucky Dip. Fished a decent match, but yet again, it was one of the 2 matches that we had on boulders and Lucky Dip were the worst ones for the wind. And these were really, really needed to fish across. If you didn't fish across, you caught nothing. So yet again, I struggled, fished out track, fished outside, and he ended up with £13, which was good enough for 3rd on the lake. But as I walked round, I missed out on 2nd by 4 ounce, which I was really disappointed at. But yes, I was finding it later when I tell you the results. It was one of those matches where I could have caught 4 ounce. I could have 2 or 3 little silver roach would have got me 4 ounce, and that drop point, as long as with other drop points, has cost me. So that was disappointing, but it was a 3rd, so that means I could drop the 5th that I had on the last match, which was quite happy about. So now I got one of my droppers out the way. Fortnight after that, and I was at Boulders, and I drew yet another flyer, peg 5. Normally this peg doesn't produce a great deal, but on our series it's thrown up a framing position every single round that somebody's fished it. So I was happy with that. Obviously, anybody would be happy with that. So I ended up fishing across, and I caught chub and hide across, but I also big potted in the channel for the barbel clip. So there's a hole there that the barbel tend to sit in, and the first half of the match weren't really doing a great deal. So I really needed the channel line to pull me out of the shit, and it did. And I was catching barbel, carp, big skimmers, big chub and hide. And he ended up with £20, which was just enough to win the lake, which I was really happy with that. I think that's probably the best match that I fished on there, so that was really pleasing. And we're coming up to the last 2 matches now, and I'm back on boulders, peg 18. This hasn't produced all round, and I was really disappointed. The match before, they only had £7 off it, so I went to the peg really disheartened, and I thought, I'll just go for chub. If I go for chub and hide and they turn up, I can do a weight. If I start messing about trying to catch a carp or a barbel, I'm just going to waste time. Damage limitation was my aim today. So I was fishing 14 metres, started off kinder potting maggots in, catching the odd fish, weren't going nowhere, so I decided pick catchy up and start catching, see if I can draw some fish into my peg. And this worked a treat because I was on a fisher chuck for the rest of the match. They weren't big, 4, it was about 4 ounce, so they were going 3 or 4 to a pound, but I was catching fish every time I went in. And I ended up with £22, but this put me 3rd again on the lake, and yet again I missed out on 2nd by 3 ounce. So it wasn't even, well, it's probably one more fish I could have caught, and I would have got me 2nd. So that's another point that I lost, position that will cost me in the end, which I was really disappointed in. So going on to the last match, and as fate would have it, boulders, peg 18, stuck to my hand again. But this time, when we got to the lake, it was all froze. Really surprised that it was froze over, because on the way down it was like 3 or 4 degrees. But the further I went to Cheshire, the lower the temperatures. It was thick with frost when I got off the motorway. The farmers' fields, the odd pond in the farmers' field was frozen. So I thought we might get away with it, because it might just be cat ice, but it was frozen. So a late draw, which gave us enough time to break all the pegs full of ice. And like I said, I was on boulders 18. The peg itself was broke out and about 2 metre wide, straight across. Give me a couple of options to fish to, and I fished to the ice to my right and to the left. Maggots on one side, pellets on the other. Far bank, I fished maggots. And to cut a long story short, the first 2.5 hours, dreadful. I had 1 fish on maggot, 1 fish on dobbin bread, and they were both small chub. And I thought, it's not happening. The guy on peg 20 was catching chub from underneath the bridge. It must have been warmer, because at that side it weren't even froze. Pegs 1 and 20 weren't froze. Whereas every other peg on the leg was solid. So I needed to change something in order for me to catch a few fish. So yet again, out came the catty catapulting. So I had to manage to draw a few fish into my peg. It weren't hectic by any means. You'd catch 2 fish and then nothing for about half an hour. So I thought, I set a new rig up, 4.5 foot bottom of the slope, and I'll alternate my far bank and my bottom of the slope, and that's what I did. And I ended up with 12 chub and hide and about half a dozen small skimmers. And I ended up with £7, which doesn't seem a lot, but on the conditions I was quite happy with, especially for the first half of the match when I'd only had 2 fish. So Mar was the first to weigh in, and he had 7. Like I said, I weighed £7. Guy on peg 20. I'd only had £10. I thought he would have miles more than that, so I weren't far from them. Peg 3 and 5 both struggled for £3, and then it was similar weights all the way around to peg 14, and he put £7 3 ounce on the scales. Yet again, I got beat by ounces for a better finishing position. So that's 3 matches where I could have picked up a better position by a matter of 4 or 5 ounce. Really, really gutting. But if your luck's not in, your luck's not in. And we got back to the car, it was time for the draw, and the results are read out. I think first I had 14 points over the 8 matches. Second, I had 15 points, and I ended up joint third with 16 points. So you can see the 3 positions, the 3 lost points that they had cost me from winning the match. Well, winning the Winter League, which is really gutted about. I'm always a bit down on myself after these sort of events, because people think joint third, be happy with joint third, fishing a new venue against new anglers, takes you a while to get used to the lakes. But in my mind, I did have the chances. I should have won it. I'm really disappointed that I didn't win it. But third, I suppose third's alright, but no, not really what I wanted, especially after being so close on so many matches. Ounces either way could have really done it for me, but that's fishing for you, I suppose. And like I said, that's the Winter League over with. So what have I got planned for the future matches? Well, I'm on Hornsdam again at the weekend, standing in, but that's the last round of Hornsdam. And then maybe I might be able to get some F1 fishing done. I've not done any for about 4 or 5 months. So I'm really looking forward to getting some F1s caught. So keep viewing my vlog, and see you again. Cheers.